of cats around here.
Yeah, yeah. Right.
And
They've been trying to eat our microphones.
and they might make an appearance later on.
Okay, so I'm here with Hedvig in her beautiful garden, and we're going to look at some principles that can really help you design a really successful and productive growing space. But first, Hedvig, perhaps you can tell us a little bit about how this all started.
Yeah, sure. So it all happened about 3 years ago, and my boyfriend had moved into the house, and this space was just a concrete space. Really, it should be a garage, or it should be a roof on top of it.
Right.
So we've got walls on all three sides.
Tree behind us.
A massive tree behind us.
Yeah.
Houses around the outside.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's quite a sort of quite a typical urban space that you might find, and not
challenging.
Yes, definitely challenging to grow food when you don't have any soil, when you don't have any water, when you have limited sun, when you've got wind coming through. It's a challenging space, and not necessarily an inspiring space to start off with either. I remember showing a friend and they just said, "That's the most uninspiring space that you've got." I was like, "Thanks." So I really needed to get started. So the first thing I really did was to observe the space. And I did that a number of ways. So I live on the first floor slightly above, and from my bedroom window I can see down here. So on a day I would take photographs at different times of day to really be able to map it out. And then I could draw the diagram and sort of see how the space...
See where the sunny bits,
and it changes quite a lot, and it's not necessarily how you would expect it to be. So this is south facing, and yet it becomes quite shady at different points of the day because of the buildings around it. So it's good not to assume that you understand how the sun works in the space, but really to observe it and to understand. One of the ways that I also did that was there are quite a lot of cats around here.
Right.
And
they've been trying to eat our microphones.
and they might make an appearance later on. So one of the things that I did was actually to observe where the cats were moving in the space. There was one old one who used to lie here, which indicated that was probably quite a sunny space, and quite a warm space. So I did some of that observation using the local resources of the cats.
Right, very good.
So in terms of getting started, it was really important to figure out how we would start growing, what would be a useful way. So I first moved down from London with lots of pots, and so I moved them into here, and then placed them in different areas again to see how they responded to the space. And so in some areas they became much more wind beaten, in other places they did much better because they were a bit more sheltered. So I could really understand from interacting with this area how it would work.
And it's amazing how even in such a small space in this, but you could have so many differences in terms of wind and in terms of sun, and you know, it's not obvious until you actually start doing it how much it can vary in a space like this.
Absolutely, and how much it changes from the summertime to the winter time. So when I moved in it was winter, it was January, and yet in the summertime it's amazing the depth that we get of sunlight and how much that changes. So when we were observing it, actually this place is really sunny. And this is much more shady, partly because of the elder. And so here we could grow more like our salads, more like some of the berries, things like that, that are used to being more woodland plants. Whereas out on the south-facing wall, we were growing tomatoes, we were growing the things that were fruiting. We would have, in the first year, we had beans up here as well. So those are much better suited to the sunny areas. So yeah, really started with observing the space, trying to get to understand it, spending time really understanding it before making any changes.
So observe and interact is our first principle.
Definitely. And the idea of that is that the more you understand, the more you observe, the better the outcome is going to be in the end. So instead of rushing in and building and doing, it's just sort of to take your time and really make the mistakes on paper if you can when you're designing it, rather than in practice.